You know, when we started these YouTube hockey updates on a daily basis throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, we thought, you know what, we'll get some news, some analysis. But Mark Masters, you are keeping us busy. Your game day skates and your practices are providing as much news as some game nights. Mark, let's get to it. First and foremost, let's deal with Austin Matthews. He was not on the ice today. Is this a concern or is everything okay?
Well, he's going to play in this game tonight, but it is rare for him to miss a team skate. It hasn't happened all that much, certainly this season. So it does raise your eyebrows. He played obviously a lot in Game 2, and he threw a game high 6 hits, tied for the game high. He was very physical in that game. So if he needs a little extra time off the ice, you can certainly understand that. But it's unusual, I will say that, for Austin Matthews to miss a team skate. So it does make you think that maybe he's not quite 100%, and that would be, of course, something worrisome. But no one's at 100% at this time of year, Gino.
I would never say this, but I saw some jokes online that, sure, Matthews' back is sore from carrying the team for the last 2 games, which he's been unbelievable. There's no doubt about that. William Nylander. Mark, you got to help me to understand this, because more and more he's skating more and more, and yet he's still potentially not ready to come back for tonight's Game 3. Tell us what you saw from him today during the rushes.
It's one of the strangest playoff injury situations I've dealt with ever. Maybe the strangest. He's on the ice again. One of the first skaters out, looking like he's all right. He's smiling, and it wasn't a normal game day skate. We waited all the way to the end to get some line rushes, but there he was on that third line with Pontus Holmberg and Kalle Järnkrok kind of going through some rushes. So at that point, you're thinking, okay, that's something different from what we saw a couple days ago in the morning of Game 2. So, that leads us to believe he's likely going to play. But then we get into the dressing room, and we're waiting, and he's not coming off the ice. And then we go and we leave the room to go talk to Sheldon Keefe, who tells us there's a chance Nylander's going to play tonight, but also pointing out that Nylander's out there with the projected scratches, putting in extra work. And you never see someone stay out late and then play in the game that night. You save your energy, and you conserve your energy. So it looks like he's not going to play. It looks like he's going to miss another game. And Keefe said it will be up to, kind of how he's responding to this. But at this point, again, looks like no Nylander.
But does he look like he's favoring anything out there? Sometimes you go, okay, he's out there taking line rushes, but he's not shooting. So maybe it's his hand. He's trying to take line rushes, but he's pacing himself. Is there anything you're seeing from him physically that makes you think this might be the problem?
He's a pretty fluid guy, usually pretty smooth on the ice, and certainly he hasn't looked completely like himself. But I can't see him favoring anything. It's hard for me to, you don't even see him go to the bench and talking to the medical staff or anything, or gesturing to something that's bothering him. That there's been no tells. That's what's made this so tricky. Obviously, in the playoffs, the team's not giving away any information on even upper or lower. We don't know anything about the nature of the injury, which makes it very hard to kind of speculate. But yeah, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen him, grimace and look at a part of his body or anything like that.
I've been impressed with what I've seen from Mitch Marner off the ice. On the ice, 0 points so far. He's a -1 through the first 2 games of the series. All kinds of question marks. He comes back home now. And obviously he got pummeled in the scrum. Everybody wants to talk to him. But what do you think of the way he's handling himself? Because he doesn't seem to be cowering away from facing the situation right now.
Yeah, no, I thought he handled everything great this morning. We entered the dressing room, a huge horde of media. We all go kind of to the back wall, which is where the bigger names will speak. I requested Marner. He came right out right when we entered the room, and he handled all the questions, I thought, as well as could be expected. Talking about the defensive job they're doing against the David Pastrnak line, how you have to accept your role. You're taking on those tough minutes, and you just cannot cheat for offense against that line, because that's what Boston is waiting for. That's what's killed the Leafs in the regular season series. Again, in Game 1 is kind of the breakdowns, the mistakes. They end up in the back of your net against a team like Boston. There's just not a lot of space out there for either team right now. But the Leafs, they have that high-end skill, whereas if Austin Matthews can sneak in behind Charlie McAvoy, get a breakaway, he's going to finish that, and that can be the difference in a game as long as he can saw off maybe the special teams, which the Leafs were able to survive in Game 2. So I thought Marner handled it well. Sheldon Keefe has clearly been on the front, clearly recognized what's happening in this market right now, how Marner's taking some heat. Immediately after Game 2 ended, he was defending Marner again yesterday, again today, talking about how he likes what that line is giving him. So I think everyone involved is handling it the right way. I don't sense any panic. I don't sense any frustration. So that's a good sign for the Leafs, and you just got to hope that if Marner keeps doing the right things, he'll break through eventually.
Not surprisingly, the Leafs look like a dramatically different team in Game 2 than they did in Game 1. They tried to remain physical in both those contests. It worked in the second game. How do the Leafs draw the balance between toughness and discipline? Because the Bruins' power play has been unbelievable, clicking at almost 43%, 3 for 7 so far in the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Bruins' power play had been terrible down the stretch, so that's obviously a very positive development for them in this series, and they are going to make a tweak tonight. It looks like James Van Riemsdyk is going to enter the series and take on a role as a net front guy in one of their power play units. They still are tinkering a little bit with what's going on their power play, but for the Leafs, yes, it is a line to walk. We've seen Brad Marchand draw a penalty in each game. Undisciplined play from Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi. And I asked Coach Sheldon Keefe about dealing with Marchand, and he said, you got to be careful. You got to recognize who you're on the ice with. He also pointed out that this is a team that knows how to sell it when there's been an infraction. So maybe planting a bit of a seed with the referees tonight that, don't be hoodwinked if these guys are really trying to sell it, because there are a lot of similar plays in the playoffs, some that get called, some that don't. So it is a line to walk, and this building is going to be amped up. They got the towels are out here. Bring the passion, and just keep in mind that the Leafs did not play very well in the playoffs at home last year, 1-5. They were much better on the road last year in the playoffs, and that trend continued in the regular season. They were the fourth best road team this season in terms of points percentage, 19th in home points percentage. So they're going to need to manage the emotions well tonight, Gino.
Speaking of planting seeds and home and away, I love when coaches try to plant seeds in our minds and in the league's minds. Jim Montgomery making the comment about he didn't like the way things are scheduled with the extra time they're spending in Toronto. Were you there as part of the scrum when Montgomery was making those statements? What did you think of what he had to say?
Yeah, I mean, he was asked a direct question about that, and he gave a direct answer. I don't blame him. I mean, yeah, they had a great regular season, finished above the Leafs in the standings, and you're expecting that there's going to be an advantage there. Of course, they get the additional home game, but the way it's worked out with where the games have fallen, they're going to have 2 days off between games 3 and 4. They would have much rather game 3 happening on Thursday, game 4 on Saturday, so that they don't spend the extra day in Toronto. He's saying, hey, we're spending more time in Toronto than Toronto's spending in Boston in this series. How does that work? So everyone is there's nothing. I don't know if there's any gamesmanship, of course. The schedule isn't going to change. It's been set by the league, but it is interesting that he would raise that point and that would be something on his mind. I can see it both ways, though. Sometimes it's better to kind of have a chance to be away from your home market. There's less local media following you on the road usually, and then it's a chance to kind of cocoon yourself and be with your teammates and have more camaraderie. So it's not necessarily have to be a negative, but it was interesting then that was on his mind and that he voiced that this morning.
Despite some ups and downs, the roller coaster that has been for Ilya Samsonov this year, obviously he's going to get the start tonight. The Bruins going back to Swayman, sticking with their back and forth. If Swayman comes up big tonight, does he own the net moving forward?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know. It sounds like they've done a lot of this planning ahead of the series. Emily Kaplan of ESPN reporting that they had made the decision on the Game 2 starter well in advance of what happened in Game 1. They were always going to go to Linus Ullmark. So I don't know. I don't know. Only Jim Montgomery knows. He's not telling his wife, apparently, what his plans are, so he's not going to tell us. If Swayman looks amazing tonight and wins again, he's owned the Leafs all season, I would find it very hard to move away from him. It's also of note, Austin Matthews has absolutely owned Linus Ullmark in his career. He's averaging more than a goal a game against him in his career. I think it's like 12 goals in 11 games, and he hasn't had as much success against Jeremy Swayman. I believe it's 2-5. So that might be something that plays into the mind of the coaching staff, especially if Matthews is kept off the board tonight. If he's the guy, like if you're the Boston Bruins, you're keeping Marner off the board so far. Who knows what's happening with William Nylander? If you can find a way to somehow contain Matthews, be it through goaltending or your defense, then that will swing the series in your favor. So I don't know what they're going to do, but I think a lot of it may hinge on what we see in this game tonight.
Mark Masters, the busiest guy so far in the Stanley Cup playoffs, because you don't just work game nights. You got a lot to put out there pre-game as well. Mark, we appreciate all this info. Looking forward to tonight's game, and then you and I will chat again tomorrow.